Homage to the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. Today let's talk a little bit about the challenges of being virtuous in a corrupt world. So it's not easy living in the world today, and it probably wasn't easy even before, but as we purify our physical, verbal, and mental actions, as we correct our view, have a firm resolve and intent on the Buddha's Noble Eightfold Path, and we start to develop the mind, what we start to see, which maybe we couldn't have seen before, is that the world is increasingly corrupt. The roots of greed, hatred, and delusion truly exist. And every time we turn on the news, we don't want to turn on the news because all we see is corruption, bad actions, hurt, hate, fear, all these nasty things and the things that come with being not virtuous. And so when we say the world is corrupt, it's not pure, it's not a place that is easy to live in, to inhabit. And there's fighting, discontent, arguing, and harming each other in many ways. So it's not easy being good, being someone that is trying to walk the Noble Eightfold Path, and as part of that, developing virtue, developing goodness. That is both in generosity and also in virtue itself, in keeping the 5 precepts, taking on the 10 wholesome actions. So when it comes to generosity, this world is more of a take as much as you can world. And that's a broad generalization. It's not entirely true, but there are pockets of people that don't do that. But largely the world is take, take, take. And you can see that with what's happening in the world. And when the world goes into pandemics, wars, difficult situations with the climate, then what arises is more of this taking, more of this fighting over what remains. Now when you walk the path, as you know, dhanakata, the Buddha encourages giving. And so when you give, you notice that other things start to flow. And it comes from a place of letting go, a non-greed place. And there are blessings of that when you adopt a take, take, take attitude, you don't see. In fact, what's really interesting, one of the challenges with giving in a time where taking is more prevalent, people get quite paranoid. They think, why are you giving this to me? Why are you doing this for me? And so the simple act of goodness can sometimes be misconstrued, and often is misconstrued, that you must want something if you are so generous with me. And paranoia sets in when people have that kind of questioning. And so it's often challenging even to be generous at times like this. Maybe what is being thrown up is a bit of shame that they're not generous. Sometimes it's a little bit like a mirror. If someone is quite pure, both in generosity, lack of stinginess, but also in how they behave through body, speech, and mind, it's very apparent. And sometimes that can be quite intimidating when you actually walk the virtuous path. Of course, it can also be something that people like because they can trust you. They know what they're dealing with. They can afford to let down their guard because of that trust. But it is still hard being virtuous because you can often be judged quite harshly. The ones that walk the Noble Eightfold Path, that want to purify the body, speech, and mind, in order to develop the path, it's literally that you're going against the stream. So the worldly stream is heading towards greed, hatred, and delusion, more of the same. And those that try their hardest to to actually refrain, then you're going against the stream. And so it's not meant to be easy. The current is flowing in a different direction and you're going against it. So when it comes to killing, people invite you to go hunting or to go watch a violent movie or something of that nature. Or they have habit tendencies to kill cockroaches and things like that, but you don't. It's not easy to be around people like that. You have to decline those invitations. And that's not easy. You may lose friends. You may be at the cold front of being criticized for being weak, called names, all kinds of things. And same with stealing, taking what is not given. Quite often people just take without asking permission, all the way to severe corruption. Or you turn on the news and all you see are people stealing from other people, people in government being corrupt, people heading up companies who are corrupt, and many more permutations of that nature. Then when it comes to sexual misconduct, again, you turn on the news and there's all kinds of things. Rape, pedophilia, cheating, perversion, all kinds of things seem to be increasing. You cannot turn on the news without seeing something like that. And so it's very disturbing when you see and read and hear about these things. You think, what is the world coming to? Has it always been this way? Am I only just seeing it now? And is it getting worse? And then when it comes to lying, well, cheating and lying seem to go together. Again, when you're at work, you see certain things like that. And on the news, of course, you see certain things like that. You never hear the truth. It's always corrupted. It's people with agendas and things of that nature. It's also quite disturbing. And then when it comes to alcohol and intoxication, well, we know in the world that we inhabit right now, it is a drug world. It is an alcohol world. And again, if you choose not to do these things, then you're the one that actually is the most wakeful, the most mindful in a situation where there is free-flowing alcohol, drugs, and so on. And you never see the best of someone's behavior when they're intoxicated. In fact, sometimes you worry, is it going to be very absurd, very deluded, with a large dose of madness, because that's what alcohol and drugs bring? Or is it going to be something even worse than that, like violent, abusive? And so that's the construct of our world right now. People undertaking habits and being morally corrupt. It's very hard to live in a world that is morally corrupt, because those moral agreements, they safeguard each other and enable us to live together. And so when the morality goes down, and it certainly is going down, then it becomes increasingly difficult to live with each other in the world. What happens when you're on the Buddha's Noble Eightfold Path is you start to turn away. There is a distaste with what you have to deal with. And so you only deal with it as much as you need to. So you go to work and you sometimes grit your teeth and you bear with it, all the while maintaining a certain level of integrity as best as you can. And that means turning down situations which involve danger. You may not go to the pub, or even if you go to the pub, you're very, very careful, because it's very easy to slip and to be pulled in. And nobody likes to be called names or be labeled a particular way because you don't come for certain things. And particularly when you're younger, you're not as strong to withstand peer pressure. As you get older, you start to prioritize and see, well, there is no point in giving in. They'll call you names anyway. You'll never be good enough anyway, because when it comes down to it, like goes with like. Buddha talks about elements, that if you have the same inclination, the same intent, the same resolve, you go together. So if you have bad inclinations, unwholesome mindsets, that kind of bad intention to just be heedless or negligent, then you go with that. Like at the time of the Buddha, that would have been Devadatta. All the people that wanted to incline in unwholesome conduct, they would go with Devadatta. And when it came to all the other ones, with wisdom, you would go with Sariputta, Venerable Sariputta. And if you were to go with psychic abilities, you would go with Venerable Mahā Maṅgala, and so on. Buddha talks about this in the Caṅkama Sutta, that good inclination, bending towards the kusala, having that same intent to be imbued with integrity and goodness, then you would go with the good. You would be with people that incline that way, to be generous and to be virtuous. And so if we come back to distaste or dissatisfaction with the world, this is a very normal thing when you walk the Buddha's Noble Eightfold Path. In the Dutiyasaññā Sutta, then you see there's other suttas similar with talk about perceptions, but the one about Sabbaloka Anabharata Sanya, this is about dissatisfaction towards the world. It gets like that when you walk the Noble Eightfold Path, and it's a wholesome perception. It's because the mind draws back from the world. It turns away from the world because it sees that it is imbued with greed, hatred, and delusion. People that are following delight in the world are misperceiving, and they're quite deluded. And so it's a place that doesn't come from hate. It's not that you hate the world. It's that you find it dissatisfying. There's a distaste towards it. You want to walk with Buddha, the noble arahants, and those that are following those teachings. And so you need to go against the stream. And so everyone who is going against the stream has this distaste for the world, some more strongly than others. So people in the world, they do like generosity in terms of being on the receiving end, but they also are intimidated by it. It's like that saying, you can overwhelm them with kindness. When you overwhelm someone with kindness, sometimes initially it's intimidating, but later it's like, wow, this person is so wonderful, especially during a time of need. But when it comes to virtue, it can be lots of name calling, like this person is goody good. Oh, let's not talk to them because they'll tell on us, or something of that nature. They're not fun. Being virtuous is not often considered fun, cool, hip. It's more fun to break one's sila, to be heedless, to say what you like, to call other people certain things, to have harsh speech, and to do what you like. To do what you like with your body and not care about the ramifications or how it will affect other people. But then when we go to the Mahā Maṅgala Sutta, the Buddha talks about being with someone who is wiser. It says, asevana chabalanam panditanam chasevana. So don't associate with those who are foolish, but associate with those who are wise. And it should be said that when you associate with someone who is wiser, that's really good, because you need to rise up to that challenge. When someone is wiser, someone is more skilled, it's actually quite a wonderful thing. When you think about how we live our lives, some of the habit tendencies we have, we tend to hang out with the foolish. You might ask, how is that possible? Well, it is possible because if you spend a lot of time in the news, if you spend a lot of time reading people's writing, then you ask yourself, do these people have right view? Are they walking the Noble Eightfold Path? And the answer is no. The newsreaders are not. The people, even at work, are not. There might be a few here or there, but many people are not. And when you look at most people are sad. The mind is not bright. The mind is not uplifted. And yes, the world we live in is challenging, but they don't know how to lift the mind. They don't know how to conduct themselves in order to lay the foundation to lift the mind. Their intent is not helpful to lifting the mind. So we tend to spend a lot of time with those who are foolish, listening to their foolish words, bala lapanang. They're driveling about nonsensical things, about things that are meant to incite fear or hatred or greed. And we're not really listening to the wise. We only listen to the wise when we read a sutta, we listen to someone who is saying the Buddha's words, who is encouraging to correct the view. And that's very rare, because if you look at 24 hours in a day, we sleep for maybe 7 or 8 hours, plus or minus. And then all the rest of the time we're in a work environment or a school environment, education, or at home with various people or in the community. And then we have time alone. And what the Buddha also encourages is that if you can't be with the wise, the good, then be alone. It's safer. So how do we recognize wise people? How do we recognize good people? Well, there are many suttas about that. Usually we recognize them through their physical, verbal, and mental actions. Their attitude, whether it is grateful and thankful or whether it is not that. Whether they keep the precepts, whether they walk the Noble Eightfold Path, and whether they imbue themselves in defilements and hindrances, or whether they try and correct that, try and purify that. So why do we keep virtue? Why are we generous? Well, we need it to walk the Noble Eightfold Path, but also because it offers protection. So at a very simple level, if we don't kill as one of the precepts, we refrain from killing, and we refrain in order to walk the path. But essentially we're offering abhayadana, we're giving safety to other living beings. So what comes back in that respect? Protection. If we don't kill, there is more likelihood that we won't be killed. If we don't steal, there is more likelihood that we won't have things stolen from us, taken from us. If we don't have sexual misconduct, then those same things won't happen to us. If we don't lie, then of course we won't be on the receiving end of so much false accusations and things of that nature. And when it comes to intoxicants, well, there won't be madness, muddle-mindedness, unmindfulness. And that's in this lifetime and the next. And so when you cultivate that, what you see from Buddha's words is that there's a lot of protection. And of course the end result is always that you're leaning towards Nibbana. So virtue and generosity, they're factors leading to stream entry. They're things that really form the foundation and basis for the path. They're part of the Noble Eightfold Path. And so along the way we may lose friends, we may lose even family members in terms of not being quite liked by family members for what we practice and what we do. Friends may not want to return our calls, may not want to meet up, may eventually fall away. And these are friends that we've had since childhood, or family members that we used to be close to when we were younger. But the more you walk this path and you become more sure about this path, certain things fall away, whether you like it or not. The main thing is not to take that personally. Like goes with like. So you may find that if you closely look at these friendships or even these relationships in the family, maybe these people, rightly or wrongly, they're going in a different direction. They enjoy being heedless, negligent. They don't want to know about virtue. They don't want to know about the Noble Eightfold Path. Maybe their time is not right for them to come walk the path. And there's also a sense of shame in some people that they can't be around you because it's like that mirror. When they see you, it reflects all the unwholesome things that they still do. So you might find that previously You may have gone to the pub with your friends when you were younger, or as you were growing up, you were introduced to alcohol or things like that. And so you used to have fun together. It may or may not have had alcohol, but they're used to seeing you in a particular way. And so when you change, when you actively choose to change, when you make that effort to take on the precepts and to refrain from all those unwholesome things, they get shocked, maybe. And then after that, they get intimidated because it's like a mirror. They haven't given up those things. They use those things as crutches still in order to get through their responsibilities and what they also find in the world. So most people will agree the world is increasingly corrupt. You ask each and every person, they'll tell you, my boss is bad to me, the politicians are corrupt, the world is becoming increasingly sexual, there's too much of this, I'm worried about my children. And they may not be walking the Noble Eightfold Path, but they see it too. But in order to get through the bad boss or the difficult co-worker or the corrupt politicians or the difficulties with their children, they might turn to different things. They might turn to alcohol, they might turn to watching particular shows on the TV, they may constantly watch the news. But none of those things actually help in a corrupt world. You're still with that stream and you're still finding it difficult. And there's an immense amount of sadness and then an immense amount of hate, fear, delusion, and a desire to try and fix it all. But that's not how you go about fixing it. And when you're virtuous, you can't tell people that because you're not sure that they're ready to hear that. And so even having to bite your tongue, having to be patient, having to wait people out until they are ready. The Buddha would wake up and cast his eye out to see who was ready. That's what the suttas would say. And then if someone was ready, he would go and help them, give a teaching, provide an opportunity. We don't have that particular ability, and so it's very difficult. Many of us probably have stories about trying to help people, and then you find they're really still not ready. And what you don't want to do is jeopardize and make it difficult for them to ever come towards the Dhamma in this lifetime. And that's why you're more patient. It's because out of kindness and compassion, you don't push the line. If they're not ready, you respect that. You're not happy about it, but you respect it. And you wait them out. Wait for them to come back or ask a question that shows they're interested. And even if they ask, you double check whether they are genuinely interested. Because you don't want to hurt people. You don't want to harm them. You don't want to turn them off or turn them away from that which is good. And that's the thing. I think one of the greatest challenges is to provide a good example to our children, to the youngsters in the world, and for young people also to present that as a different kind of role model to other young people in the world. It's too easy now with social media to present artificial happiness, artificial role models, those that are fake. But the strength comes from morality, integrity, qualities that make you trust a person in the long run, a long-standing trust, not an artificial one that breaks down at the first hurdle. So looking good externally is not the answer. It's actually inside and out, and more inside that shines out. True kindness, true compassion, true honesty is something that is very rare in the world. And those that really try so hard to keep the precepts, to walk the Noble Eightfold Path, it's not easy. And so if you're a parent, you really want to do your best to be that good example, or point out to your kids examples that are quite good, not the ones that are popular and after a few years you find what they've really been doing is doing all the wrong things but covering it all up. There's a Maya in it, Maya being hypocrisy. And isn't that what we find in a morally corrupt world? A lot of hypocrisy, a lot of fraud, Sutta. It's like there's a deception, a fraud in how people behave. They pretend to be good. They pretend to be virtuous. but really they're not. You find out that they've taken funds that weren't theirs. You find out that they've always been selling you something when really all these good things are free. You freely do these things. You freely behave in an upright manner, and you feel good about that. And maybe that's what's the thing, that on this path there is no praise from being good. You're not meant to be praised and create another role out of being a good person. It's actually that the mind gets lifted. There is no sense of shame because you actually are upright through body, speech and mind. And then when it comes to the right view, you have a healthy sense of fear of wrongdoing. And that's the thing, that you know that there's a karmic effect of what you do with your actions. And so it keeps you upright. And that's what you want your kids to be imbued with. As the world gets more corrupt, our kids, we want them to also have that protection. The protection of generosity, the protection of the virtue, and to know right from wrong, and to know that there is something that needs to be followed. So you are not alone in trying to walk this Noble Eightfold Path. You're not alone in trying to be virtuous in a corrupt world. But it is challenging. And like goes with like. We are together in how we walk the Noble Eightfold Path. We are together in how we attempt to be virtuous. And so as we develop our meditations, we trust that when we are generous and when we are virtuous, this enables our meditation. And it's quite plain to see that if you hold on to your virtue in order to walk the Noble Eightfold Path, then when you come to sit in meditation, or when you come to contemplate certain dhammas, the mind concentrates easily. And so you know that despite all the challenges of living in a corrupt world, when you guard, you know there's happiness. And so when you meditate, that is the happiness you go for. You do your best with the external conditions. There might be fleeting moments of happiness, but you know that when you sit in meditation, when you do walking meditation, when you come to contemplate the Buddha's words, the happiness, the true happiness is really there. Everything else falls away. That's our glimpse of Nibbana. And so we help each other. We stay with the Buddha's words. Who is most wise? The Buddha. What comes after that? The noble arahants. So when we keep company with them, it's actually easier. The mind is purified, the mind is happy. And from that place we can help others in simple ways, little things. It's not that we hate everyone and we can't stand it. It's more that we need to be wise even how we help others, how we manifest in the world. So let's end this session here. Let's share the merit with all sentient beings. May all beings be happy and well. May all beings be free from suffering. Blessings of the Triple Gem. Wishing you well. Theruwan saranai.